Welcome, everyone, to Send It, a logistics podcast where we talk about carriers, brokers, shippers, politics, and everything else freight. Today, we're talking about the proposed carrier efficiency test. I'm Bobby. I own a freight brokerage, and with me, as always, is Julian Mars. Julian has been a freight broker for the last 7 years, which is about 7 years longer than you need to be considered an expert on the internet, so listen up. First off, what is this proposed carrier efficiency test? It is a test that carriers would have to take before being granted a DOT number. Why? Well, the hope is that it'll increase safety. This is not new though. It's all started back in 1999. Now, before I go into a history lesson here, all the information that we're going to tell you is from research that we have done. And today, most of the information that we have obtained was from a FreightWaves article. If you're unfamiliar with FreightWaves, you should check them out. They cover the logistics industry, and in my opinion, they do some great work. As always, with the news, every author is different, and FreightWaves is not a sponsor of this show. I'm just giving credit where credit is due. So, this law for a proficiency exam was put into place back in 1999, but it did nothing for practically a decade, right? All the way until about 2008, 2009, when rulemaking was proposed and quickly shot down by a petition arguing that the FMCSA failed to produce a proper exam that would accomplish the goal of the 1999 law. Now, more than a decade later, the Biden administration is now looking to solidify the rulemaking and start putting the exam into action. And there are 11 areas that are of concern and that feedback was requested. I'm not going to go through all 11, but we are going to look at some of the 4 that stand out to me now. So the first one is recommendations on how the agency should administer the exam for applicants. Which honestly, that's a pretty good point. Is this an online test that would be easy to cheat on? I mean, could somebody else actually take the test for you without the FMCSA knowing? So, Julian, what is your take on this? How should this test be taken?
I would say the applicant needs to be in person. All major standardized tests I've ever taken, whether it be to get into college or I've taken one for the National Guard before, all those are in person. And you need your documents. They give you a list of all the credentials you need. You need it on your person. Although it might be a little inconvenient for the truckers who are trying to make a living, I mean, it's like anything. It's like voting. You know, you got to carve a little bit of time out to get it done.
And for this one, I mean, to be fair, this is for new applicants, right? If you already had a DOT number, you're not doing this. So it's not really stopping you. It's just more delaying your start, I guess. But you know, this isn't a matter of safety. And if we look at other things that maybe jobs require, you know, as far as tests go, we have drug tests. Have you ever done a drug test online?
Not possible.
No, right? So, I mean, I think definitely in person is the way that this needs to be done. All right, and number 2, which is going to be the recommendation on which motor carrier employees the agency should require to take a proficiency exam, and the feasibility of motor carriers retaining those employees through the duration of the new entrant safety assurance program. Basically, who gets to take the test for that company, and then how long does that person who took the exam, how long do they have to stick around in the company? And who's in charge of this? Who's holding people accountable to it? What are your thoughts, Julian?
The business owner, whoever is putting their name on the paperwork for the company, that should be who needs to show up for the test with the proper credentials and make sure that that's the one leading the company and putting forth the right example for everyone else.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how they're going to form this, but I really do hope, especially if it is a larger company, it's kind of hard. You know, you have a lot of different people up at the top and maybe there's multiple owners. I'm not really sure. But whoever does take this test does need to have some kind of ownership in the company so that they can't just jump ship or be let go at any time. You know, they really need to be anchored to that business because their approval was really all dependent on that one person being there. So I think that is really important. And also you could say, and you know, some people are saying that the person who takes the test isn't necessarily the person who's going to be out on the road. And how do we make sure that they are actually teaching the other people in the company, not just the drivers, but the other people in the company on the operational side of the business, you know, what they're supposed to do, who's actually following up and making sure on that. Well, listen, I mean, they're doing the best they can, and having this in place is still better than not, in my opinion. And for any type of company, you know, leadership, it's all top down, you know. So the leadership has to be in place, and those leaders need to teach the people under them to follow the rules and the things that they learned during the process to be able to take and pass that test.
Agreed.
All right, so now it's going to be number 3, which is information on how the exams would increase carrier knowledge of regulations? Huh? What? Go ahead, Julian. I'll let you go first on each one of these. This one's great.
These tests would force the carriers to probably study whatever questions are going to be getting asked on these tests. So we could at least be aware that there's going to be one leader passing the test, and then the thought would be that, they follow suit, giving the same information to the workers and the drivers. Through minimal research of this topic, I found a lot of information about the FAST Act in 2015. Obama administration put forth that through Congress, and it was pretty much an instant push through. And a lot of these things we're talking about were implemented then, and really just trying to find a better bunch of the crop and weed out a lot of these drivers with out of service and unknowledgeable carriers. Try to just get everyone under the same umbrella that knows the same information.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw in my 2 cents on this really fast. This is dumb. Let me ask myself the question here again, I guess. How would the exam increase carrier knowledge of regulations? The exam is on regulations. You study the regulations, you take the exam. If you fail, then you're not in the business. If you pass, then you must have an increased carrier knowledge, right? An increased knowledge of the regulations. You study for it, you take the test. I mean, it's as easy as that. New carriers will always get the most up-to-date exam, right? So if the regulations change, well, that's fine. Whenever you go to actually take the test, the regulations have changed, the test will change, everything is going to be up-to-date. And in my opinion, this test should not just be for new carriers. Maybe it should be for carriers every few years because the regulations change. Anyway, that's dumb. Let's go to the next one. Number 4, information on how any increase in knowledge of regulations, which we just talked about, brought about by the exam itself would boost motor carrier safety. So how would the increase of knowledge of the regulations, so already solidifying that you are going to increase your knowledge of the regulations because of the exam, how would it boost motor carrier safety? Go ahead.
It's pretty self-explanatory.
Right. What are we doing here?
Yeah, it just from researching, it seems like this has been a long problem. The FMCSA has been pretty much told by every organization and group, other than the OOIDA, because they don't want any regulations over drivers, that their regulations have been weak. You can look through FreightWaves and you'll find articles spanning from 2018 till now, pretty much talking about the same thing. Regulations are weak, and it needs to step up the guidelines and the oversight of these carriers. The one thing that I did see in addition to the test is that first-year carriers are held to a much higher standard than those who are veterans and who've been working in the industry for a long time. The one thing that I did see that the FAST Act did was they gave carriers a very short leash on violations and issues in that first year of trucking. If you keep on messing up and keep on repeating your violations, you will get your CDL pulled and you will be suspended. They upped the alcohol and drug testing requirements. So there has been an attempt to make these drivers and carriers better. But again, with this industry, it all goes back to the rulemaking and the actual enforcement of these rules. So
I would say that that's a great thing whenever they're doing the other testing when it comes to drug and alcohol, to the drivers. But some of these regulations have nothing to do with the drivers themselves, and it could be the equipment and the things that on an operational side. And that's where this really comes in, is we're not talking about the drivers. We are talking about the operational side, the owners and the business itself, making sure that it knows its regulations, because drivers, they know what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. At least most of them do. They don't always do it. There's good drivers, there's bad drivers, there's good brokers, bad brokers, whatever. That's life, right? But the business itself needs to know its rules just like drivers need to know theirs. And I don't think that that's really a thing. I think it's a huge issue. And when it comes to even maintaining the vehicles, they need to know. They can't just put it on the driver and say, hey, you shouldn't have taken it because the brakes weren't good. Yeah, you shouldn't have. You're a driver. You should know better. But guess what, business? You should have also maintained that equipment to the point where now all of a sudden it's not failing. It's already gone way too far at that time. So this question to me is just ridiculous. I'm going to read it back one more time. How any increase in knowledge of regulations brought by the exam itself would boost motor carrier safety. The last question is how is it going to bring knowledge about regulations? This one's saying it is going to, but how is that going to help or boost motor carrier safety? Guys, you learn something and then you apply it. Hey, I got a question. How does knowing law make you a better lawyer? That's crazy, right? I mean, that's basically what it is. You don't need it's crazy. It's a crazy question.
I want to be a lawyer, but guess what? I got to pass the bar exam. I would love to manage a hedge fund. You have to pass a litany of tests to do that. But hey, if you want to drive a 80,000 pound truck down the road, just toss them the keys. So I think we're all kind of getting the picture that we got to get away from that.
Again, that's a driver themselves, but yeah, as a company, yeah, we're giving them, let's say, on a load could be $100,000 or more. Basically, you're giving them $100,000 worth of goods. That's real money. It is. It might not be in the form of money, but that is value. That is $100,000. And we're giving it to a company that's ultimately going to be liable for it because the driver's not. And these out of service numbers that we keep seeing plummet, right? Well, or rise rather, right? The opposite. Who's that affecting? It's affecting the companies, and that's a reflection on the company, not so much the driver.
And that's only one half of the coin. That's the financial side of things. I mean, you're looking at the human life. These guys have to know what they're doing. In addition to transporting hundreds of thousands of dollars of goods, you're passing, I don't know how many people from point A to point B in these dangerous trucks. And this, I would recommend going back to our previous episode and listening to the speed limiter conversation we had, because it really goes all hand in hand with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going to move on to the next part of this, and which is, who is for it and who is against it. So currently, the American Trucking Association, or the ATA, is for it. They also would like to have safety training completed before applying for a DOT number. So they're saying, hey, you can take this exam, but you also need to take this safety training, and you need to pass that too, because as owners, you need to know about safety as well. What's wrong with that? But there is nothing like that in place right now, and I think a lot of people would be shocked to know that there is nothing like that in place for these big rigs on the road, and anybody to be able to just open up an MC and then hire a driver or an owner operator that has one. It's crazy. Everybody who is a part of this, including brokers too, need to know their side of safety and what is right. And so, brokers need to know every aspect about their load and what they need. Obviously, they can't maintain the trucks or the equipment, but they need to know their side, and the carriers need to know their side. And as a business owner, you are responsible for those drivers. Even if the driver's responsible for the load when it leaves, guess what? That means you are. As a business, you need to answer for every single person that you hire. That's the same anywhere. That's not just trucking, that's anywhere. So,
and in addition to the owner, they have to make sure the drivers know that they're responsible for that load too. It's not on the shippers and the receivers or whoever to manage that freight. You got to make sure the drivers have to know through leadership how to secure loads and how to make sure that they're pulling out of there safe.
Yeah. So, Julian, I'm going to give you one guess real quick. ATA is for it. Who's against it?
The OIDA.
The OOIDA, of course. So the OIDA is making 2 points. Number one, anyone can take the test for you, which honestly, that's a valid point. Fair enough. Yeah, that doesn't, if it's true, which we do not know. Nobody knows that. That's not necessarily true just because they say it. In my opinion, testing should absolutely be done in person, and I think that's definitely how they would make it if this thing goes through. So that's how I would like to see it done for sure. And then the second reason, which I'm going to quote here.
Just real quick, if there was a violation, you would be penalized. In the history of people forging tests, no one has ever gotten out scot-free if they get caught. So there would be consequences if they were to do that.
Yeah, and I'd like to see what those are. I mean, of course, this is going to be a federal forum, so that's a crime.
Right.
And the second reason, and I quote, a proficiency exam does not reflect practical knowledge of systems that will increase compliance with the regulations, does not ensure that pertinent knowledge will be passed along to all personnel involved with safety matters, does not demonstrate that effective safety compliance systems will be established, and, most important, does not in and of itself help prevent truck accidents. What a load of shit. This is crazy. The OOIDA are the biggest crybabies I've ever seen, not just in just logistics, okay? The OOIDA will shoot down anything that makes it even just a tad bit harder for bad carriers to operate. And, this solves 9 out of 10 of our problems. Nope, needs to be 10 out of 10. Or more realistically, this can and will only improve what we currently have, but it's not a solution for everything. Nope. Julian, do me a favor for a second. Imagine a doctor telling a patient with a non-curable but treatable disease, that they shouldn't bother with treatments because it will only make things better, maybe even just a little bit better. But they shouldn't bother because, hey, it's not a cure, right? It's not going to go away. It's not a total solution. Why bother? That doctor is the OOIDA. So Everybody should remember progress can be a single step. And oftentimes solutions take a whole lot of steps. But you got to start walking. So to me, Julian, this is just crazy. You're saying that you shouldn't put these things in place just because, some people will try to find ways to work around it. Is that a good reason? I mean, this is crazy. Yes, it will help some. They are doing their best to put something in place to make it harder for bad carriers to be on the road. What are your thoughts?
A lot of the solutions or answers in the trucking industry are just best effort kind of solutions, not hardline, concrete answers for all the issues and problems that we have, but best efforts. When you walk in, I've worked in restaurants before. They have the signage all over. If inspector comes in, you don't have the signage on the restaurant, you're going to get dinged. Now, that's not to say that every server and every cook in the restaurant knows all of those guidelines point by point, but it's a best effort type of situation. Put it in your face. Do what you can. Don't just say, some people are allergic to soap. They can't wash their hands. No, you know what I mean? Like, everyone has to be safer. Everyone has to be better. So it makes no sense. I'm with you.
Yeah, you just try your best. You put things in place and you see how they do. And it just gets a little bit better and a little bit better. But, that's how progress works. And it just keeps getting shot down. So moving on. So Julie and I both believe that safety is the most important objective. We also believe an added application during this process could help making the industry safer, simply by avoiding individuals who have no intention of following the rules. We believe that many of the companies that are double brokering and committing fraudulent activities are more likely to also ignore these laws, these safety laws. So they obviously have no problems committing crimes, so we kind of doubt that they're going to have safety as a priority for themselves. So Julie and I have decided to make our own application, an application which are only based on a combined 18 years of real-world experience and knowledge in the industry, so, take it for what it's worth. Our goal is to weed out as many potential bad carriers before they hit the streets. How? By asking questions that raise red flags that brokers have learned to look for before giving a carrier a load. So, Julian, what would your application look like?
The first, where I would start was, have you had a DOT or an MC before? Is there some kind of history or past that we need to know about, any issues with the previous company that you owned? The second one would be, what's the business address? Unfortunately, there are certain areas where it's just hot spots for this type of activity, mainly California. We'll get more into that. The third question on my application would be, do you have a family member in the industry that currently has a DOT or an MC? We'd have to look at any connections there. And then the fourth one would be looking into any partners that they have that they're getting into business with. So we have a full scope of who's working at the company and their full intentions and everything. So, Bobby, why don't you kind of go back over that list and maybe dig in a little bit more on each one of those points?
Sure, I can. So I guess the first one was, have you ever had a DOT before? I mean, this is really important. If you're going to be filling out a new application, we need to make sure that you haven't had a prior DOT or MC in the past, recently, or even maybe it's still current. And so the reason why is, obviously, we see a lot of fraudulent activity where somebody might take a load and now the load is stolen or something like that. It's under investigation. Somebody shuts down MC and they open up another one and they resume like it's just another day, right? Business as usual. And so we really, really need to look out for that. Fraud is a huge problem right now, and so is double brokering. And so have you ever had a DOT number before or an MC number? The second part of that is double brokering. Is it currently active or was it shut down for double brokering? Or if it is currently active, are you going to be giving loads and feeding that company loads? Or is this the new company with the good reputation that's going to be fed the loads? And so those are all things that we really need to look out for. And this is definitely a whole segment for another time, but it is a great thing to talk about because right now, fraudulent activity and double brokering is the biggest problem that the logistics industry faces, bar none. Nothing comes close.
That point, just to add to that, it'll also help maybe find any outstanding claims that a previous company might have. That's just an experience I had recently where I was given 2 MCs. They told me to use the one because the other one they had an open claim on. They were dumb enough to tell me, so I obviously found a new carrier. But in addition to double brokering, you'll also keep yourself clean, not using scary carriers who might have open claims.
Oh, sorry, you can't use that MC? Let me give you another one. I got another one. The second one I have here, how's that one look?
Exactly.
It's crazy. Right. Oh, my gosh.
Unreal.
Actually, that reminds me of a time. I remember I was waiting to get into a bar. I was young. I was probably 22 years old, waiting to get into this club. And the person in front of me gives this bouncer an ID. The bouncer looks at it, laughs, and he goes, "No, not a chance. You got another one?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, dude, this one right here." And he goes, "All right, this is the one I saw." And he lets him in. It was like, oh my gosh. That's what this is.
There's got to be a
what
method
happens
to the
today
madness.
on a daily basis with MC numbers. They're fake IDs. Pick one.
Yeah, trying to get into the club. They're underage trying to get into the club. That's probably the best analogy I could think of, actually.
All right, so the second one was, what is the business address? So when we're looking for a business address, we're looking to see, number one, where is it located? Because like you said, there are some hot spots, including some places in California, which California last year was responsible for opening 10% of all the new MC numbers, all the new trucking companies opened up. 10% of them, 1 out of 48 states, right? California is a single state. 10% of those came out of California. That's a crazy number, tons. And so a lot of the problems that we have as brokers all stem from California carriers and one spot in California predominantly. So we're not going to go into all that, but that is the first thing that we would look at too, is say, hey, what is the area that it's opening in? And then number 2, what is the actual address itself? Are there any other trucking companies that are currently open under that address? If so, we have a double brokering problem. Are there any past carrier companies that have been there in the last 6 months or so? If so, okay, what happened? Why did they close down? And is this the same person trying to open up another one after that one failed because it got shut down by the DOT maybe, right? And so those are some of the reasons. Those are the 2 main reasons why we would definitely need to have on the application the business address. You can tell a lot by a business address and even a phone number sometimes, guys. So on to the next one here is, do you have a family member that currently has an MC? Again, this all kind of goes together with fraudulent activity and double brokering. We would want to know, okay, is this just a family of truck drivers? If so, great, cool. Be an owner-operator. Go start your business, flourish, do good business. But it does raise just a little bit of a red flag. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just we have to look into it more, and we have to see if any of those other companies are operating in a way that is not proper. That's the best way I can put it. And if there is some that are operating that way, well, what are the chances that this one's just kind of getting in on that ring and they're all just throwing around freight to each other and kind of ditching bad MCs and keeping these good, and then, okay, we're going to ditch this one. Unfortunately, these things happen. Some of the people listening right now might be like, okay, what the heck? This guy's crazy. What is he talking about? He's just making stuff up. No, this happens all the time. We hear this daily. It's not just, it is daily that this happens. So be aware of it. And these are the things that we would put on there, and for good reason. And then the next one would be, do you have any partners? Every single person who's going to be listed as a business owner under that DOT or MC, because remember, this is a business whenever you get a DOT number, all of them need to have background checks. All right, we need to make sure that they're not currently an owner of another company now. Then if they are, which is still okay, again, remember, red flags doesn't mean that something bad is happening. It just means we need to look into it. You can own 5 different trucking companies if they're not really competing with each other, right? If you're an owner, just a little bit in each one of them, not necessarily anything wrong with that. But if you own 3 other trucking companies, if they're all doing really, really terrible on their safety scores, or if they've been accused of double brokering or sending things rail when they're not supposed to, or just fraudulent activities where freight just goes missing, then yeah, we need to know about that. And why in the world is this guy, opening up several different MCs or DOT numbers? And then I would add one more, which is past experience in the industry. And so if somebody's coming in and it's just brand new and they say, hey, I want to open up a trucking company and I want to be an owner operator, or maybe I have other trucks, this is going to give us a lot of information that is actually really important. For example, if somebody is opening up a brand new trucking company, they want a DOT and an MC number, and they are saying they already have 10 trucks, what in the world's going on? How do you open up day one with 10 trucks? Well, there's a good chance that you just shut down an MC or were shut down, and now you were opening up a brand new one and bringing those 10 trucks over. And so that is definitely going to be a red flag as well. Now, a lot of the times, whenever we look for these things, we're also using the same practices as brokers when we book trucks. So we're not necessarily saying, hey, who are your partners, or this kind of stuff. What we do is we use different software such as Carrier Watch or Carrier 411, and we do background checks on that carrier, and we look for other things as well. So on Carrier 411, for example, it will tell you if there is another trucking company now or in the past that has the same address as this one. If there's a phone number now or in the past that is related to another trucking company besides this one as well. And then it also goes a step further and does a name search. And it says, hey, this name, now there could be a lot of the same names, of course, but it does give you a warning that this name is associated with other trucking companies as well. And so all of these are really, really good tools for us to be able to use, and that the FMCSA and the DOT should be using as well. For example, I'll give you one more here. If a carrier is trying to take a load from us and we pull their MC and we see no freight guard reports, everything's fine, and they're just over a year in business or so. So, hey, you're a year in business, we'll work with you, no big deal. But then we look and we see he's got 1 truck, over a year in business, and no inspections. And he's been all over the United States. Or what's worse, 3 trucks, no inspections in 2 years, 3 years. Why are these trucks not getting any inspections? Is it because they're drayage carriers and they just stay really close to the port, which is maybe. But if this is a over-the-road carrier that goes all over the United States, they should have some inspection reports. If not, there is a high risk that these carriers are double brokering the freight. They're not actually taking it themselves. So that is about all I'm going to say on it. Julian, do you want to wrap it up?
If a carrier doesn't have a truck and they are a double broker, if they make it a year, they're probably going to have a bad report by then. You know what I mean? It's very rare a double broker can go a full year without a double brokering report unless they're a master at their crime. You know what I mean? I don't think I've ever seen it. That's why if I see the 1 truck no inspection under a year, I stay away from it. But by the time they make it to a year, if they're still at 1 truck no inspection, there's a 99% chance that they've messed up and have a report there already, and they're a known double broker.
Quick shout out to all the good carriers out there. We thank you. That's it for us. If you would like to become a broker but don't have a clue where to start, just go to our website and click on the free training. But what's our website again? Well, if you don't remember, matter of fact, we're kind of betting that you won't, just type in ican'tremember.com and click on free training. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And above all else, if you're one of the crappy carriers that we talk about on a daily basis and do not like our content, please do not send us hate mail. Just throw your comments into the comment section. Every comment helps. We appreciate you guys, and you'll see us in the next one. What do you think about that?
See ya. That was good.
It was good? We can end it there.
I like it. Yeah. And if you're a crappy carrier, feel free to identify yourself in the comments below.
Yeah.
You know.
We don't care if they're bad comments, just comment. If you comment, YouTube will see that
Yeah,
people are liking
I
and
don't
commenting
care.
this video. They don't care if it's bad or not, but more people will see it. The
We
algorithm.
want the traffic. We want the traffic.
And to all the good carriers out there that aren't double brokering our loads or committing fraud, we thank you.